Hey, it's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California. Fresno, the heart of the Central Valley, the heart of the great state of California. It is a great day. I'm glad to be here. I hope that you're glad that you're here, and if not, by the end of the show, you will have, I hope, experienced a bit of insight and understanding into this thing called life that is you, that lives life as you by living through you. You know, one of the things that I like to say as I open each and every show is that as you opened this day for yourself before you opened your eyes, that you claimed your good, you claimed the gift of this day. Because truly, this thing called life, this thing called spirit or God or source or first cause, it gifted you this day. But it gifted you this day long before you ever set foot, as it were, on this physical plane. That's awesome, and you're awesome. It's a great day. Hope you're glad to be here. Anyway, last time I was with you, we started going through a book by Ernest Holmes called This Thing Called Life. Surprise, surprise. And we did the first chapter, the introduction. I'm going to pick up chapter 2 and possibly even chapter 3 today. We'll see how we go and how time allows. But the idea of this thing called life, and that's a phrase that Dr. Holmes used a lot, this thing called life. He was talking about the divine principle or first cause or God, but he was also talking about us because, as he would often say when he was speaking his word, if you will, there is but one life, that life is God, that life is my life, your life now. There's one life, and there's only one life. Life began on this, from a scientific understanding, life began on this planet, a few weeks ago, a couple of millennia ago, whenever it was. One day there was a rock with no life, and the next thing you know, the precursors to life began to come together. And beyond that, ultimately, that amazing creation, and I'll use the word creation, and you can understand that in any way you want, but that first single cell or first grouping of single cell organisms, life, it existed there, and it grew there, and it grew beyond there, it multiplied, it grew beyond its multiplication, it multiplied, it became diverse, and all sorts of things happened, but it was still just that one life. At no time did life cease on this planet. This life that we live today is that same life living as each and every one of us. It's important that we understand that as we seek to walk our spiritual path because of the ramifications. If truly there is one life, if truly that there is a creative source behind all that is, if truly that we are, if you will, created in the image and likeness, the nature of the divine principle, there is no separateness. We talk about a unity, a oneness. And oftentimes we speak about that and of that in terms that are of a spiritual nature, I'll say. But in reality, it is the materiality also. You know, the relative part of our expression, this physical part that we call life. There's but one. There is no two. There is no us and something else. There's just the I am, of which we are individualized, but we're not separate from. It's important as we, like I say, as we walk our spiritual path, because as we understand the true nature of the divine and our place in that nature, in that expression, as we seek to experience and to live life and live it more abundantly, we need to make sure that we are in alignment with principle on the level of our spirituality, our consciousness, our subjective side, but also on our objective side. I don't know about you, but looking out in the world today, life kind of is a little bit on the crazy side, isn't it? And it makes no difference which side of the craziness you may find yourself. You know that other side? Yeah, well, they're God also expressing. And sometimes that's easy to look over there, wherever the over there is, and be good with it. But sometimes when we look at the over there and we see violence, maybe violence at the point of life-taking, for whatever reason, and people get all up in arms, they want to extract retribution. We got to remember, the perpetrators of that violence, they're also God expressing. They're also an individualized expression of I am. They may have separated themselves out in consciousness, but as we seek to create a greater life, a better life, a more abundant life for ourselves, we need to include them. We include them with boundaries, healthy boundaries, for sure. But we need to look out there, as Jesus said, we love our neighbors, we love ourselves. We love God with all we are. God is love. We look out into the world. If we seek to create a greater, better, more harmonious world for ourselves, we have to start first with love as we look at life. So we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to pick up in chapter 2 of this thing called life. And I'll refer to something in the textbook, The Science of Mind, before I do that. So I'll see you then.
When you need to get fit, contact Gary Torres, IFBB Pro, specializing in weight loss, body transformations, and contest prep. Email GaryTorres5336@yahoo.com.
Hey, I'm Chris DeVold. Tune in every Friday night on CentralValleyTalk.com when I bring you Sex, Drugs, Chris DeVold, where I'll give you 3 guesses on what we talk about. And I also vow to bring you 1 live local music act a week. So tune in every week because you never know what kind of music you're going to hear right here on CentralValleyTalk.com.
Did you know most hair and beauty salons in the Central Valley are not disposing of their chemicals correctly? Partner with us today to become an eco-friendly salon. Visit us online at greenbeautywaste.com. Our phone number is 559-367-7206. And be sure to visit us on Instagram and Facebook at Green Beauty Waste.
The Space Colony Journals are an epic tale of a family's struggle to survive. Meet the courageous women and dangerous men who dare to carve a home on the alien world of Vensu. Get your copy today. Available on Amazon and Gale Daly's FineArt.com.
You enter this door with expired tags. Beyond is another dimension, a dimension of regulations, a dimension of long waits. You have reached the registration zone. What looks like an ordinary shop is actually Mitchell Smog, located in the heart of the Tower District, a few minutes from the DMV. Mitchell Smog offers your vehicle a STAR-certified smog inspection. So remember Mitchell Smog when you need to pass through the registration zone.
Contact Sarah Hernandez of June and Matt Photography to schedule your portrait, engagement, wedding, or next family photo session. But that's not all. Sarah is also your personal brandographer, helping you ditch the stock photos and get images that sell. Call 559-412-3721. Visit juneandmattphoto.com and follow Sarah on Instagram and Facebook.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling. Moving forward, before I actually get into Chapter 2 of this thing called Life by Dr. Ernest Holmes, I want to read something out of The Science of Mind, what we commonly refer to as the textbook, and this should be found on page 285. And it's a page that I reflect back upon not infrequently, and I share rather frequently. And I've shared on the show many times, but as we move forward, thinking about this thing called life, our desire to not only experience and express, but to create a greater, better life. Dr. Holmes says, faith in God is such a complete conviction that the Spirit will make the gift, that there is no longer any subjective contradiction. This faith can exist only in such degree as the conviction is in line with reality. And here he capitalizes reality, and he's referring to the source of all that is, cosmic consciousness, God, first cause, Spirit. He says we cannot believe that any law of the universe, and again, that's capitalized, he's talking about a law of God. We cannot believe that any law of the universe will ever change its own nature because we desire it to do so. And you know, we work real hard to get the divine, to get God to change its nature to suit us in many different ways of our life. Oftentimes it's not of great consequence, but sometimes it is. And this, what he's talking about here, is one of those times that it really is of great consequence. He says, we cannot believe that any law of the universe will ever change its own nature because we desire it to do so. And this is all caps that follows. He says, as we come into the spiritual realm, which is a perfectly natural and normal realm, we have to come into it in its own nature. So as we move forward today in chapter 2 of this thing called life, think about this. We have to come into it and to it in its own nature. He says it is a unity. There's that thing, that oneness, that unity. And there's no exception there. He says there must be nothing vicious in it. Remember what Jesus said, therefore, if thou bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother has aught against thee, leave there thy gift before the altar and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother, and then come and offer thy gift. Why? Because we cannot enter into peace while we are in a state of confusion. That state of confusion is a state of judgment, anger, hate, can also be worry and fear. These are things that are not in alignment with divine principle. So wherever we're at in our life, we got to align ourselves. But hate's a big one. As I said earlier, and we opened the show today, we look out in the world, there's so much chaos. That chaos is not created by a consciousness of love. That chaos is created by a consciousness of judgment, prejudice, bigotry, hatred, a desire to be right at all costs. We cannot enter into peace while we are in a state of confusion. Cannot be done. We cannot manifest love when we have a mental equivalent of hate in our hearts and minds. And when we talk about love in this sense, we're talking about love in its greatest sense. We talk about God, we we use the word love to define God. And that's a concept of love that probably extends beyond probably all of our individualized understanding of the word, our consciousness. But God is love, and God is giving, and God is good, and God's creation is good. But we don't experience and we don't express it as good when we separate ourselves in consciousness from the truth of who we are. So understanding our relationship to this thing called life becomes important as we seek to express, to experience, to create in our own life, but through us into the world, not only around us, but beyond that, a greater good, a greater abundance, a greater level of peace. So, in chapter 2, Holmes says, "It is said that Jesus, walking through the multitude, diffused a healing power which touched people into wholeness by its divine presence. His command stilled the wind and the waves. His knowledge of spiritual law fed the thousands. His consciousness of peace calmed the troubled mind." Holmes is talking about here, how the master teacher, as he walked through the crowds, and it's an interesting thing, and maybe I'll have an opportunity to get to it today. I will refer back to a book that was written about the same time the textbook was, by a fellow by the name of Harry Emerson Fosdick, and he was a Christian theologian. And he wrote a book called Guide to Understanding the Bible. It's not in print, I don't believe, but it's still readily available. You can get it used. It's a great book if you want to understand the evolution of humanity's understanding of who and what God is and who and what humankind is, and what our relationship is with the divine, as it's understood by humanity through the ages. And it's amazing that the concept of our relationship with the divine so radically changed with the teaching of the master teacher. Although emphasis is placed by common teaching on other aspects of his ministry, he brought into the world a consciousness of God, of the divine, that was so radically different from what the Hebrew philosophy, the Israelites' philosophy was in that day. Most people kind of miss that in a sense. Everybody gets it when we recognize that Jesus gave the Lord's Prayer to his disciples as a way of praying. But that statement, the question that precedes that, and the statement that precedes that, goes something to the effect that his disciples had observed him in his relationship with the divine. And they queried him, they asked him, how they could experience basically the same thing. How could they pray like he prayed? And he gave them the Lord's Supper, But it's not the words necessarily, but the concept. And the concept was, when we pray with a personal relationship with God. Now, that's not so off the track from what is commonly taught, but when we understand that up until that time, prayer was either it was an activity that was done ceremonially, it was done in sacrifice, but it wasn't done on the individual level with the recognition of that relationship between the individual and the divine principle. It's only after the second destruction of the temple in like 65 CE when the rabbinical teachers began to teach personal prayer basically in the place of what used to be sacrifice. Now, there's a lot of historical issues that relate to that. I'm being very overly simplistic, but the concept of this personal idea of prayer between the individual, going into the closet, the secret place, and praying, believing, it's a whole new concept. You know, before you speak your words, my Father will answer. My Father, Abba, everybody's Father. We are all divine children of an infinitely loving, creative, abundant Father. That's what he taught. There's no wiggle room in there for hate. There is no place for fear to live there. And yet we tend to find ourselves in those places as we look out into life, knowing that we have a bigger God than whatever life can bring at us. It can be daunting, maybe, if we've not had much experience. But as you continue to put into practice the principles taught in the science of mind, you begin to have a place, a foundation, if you will, of understanding and knowing that as you look out into life, no matter what the screenshot, if you will, of your life is at this moment, there is a way, a pathway, a provider, a guide, an inspiration that's going to take you from here to the other side of whatever here is in a way that works, an incredible demonstration of divine love. So with that in mind, moving forward, he says his love was as a healing balm. Let's talk about his knowledge of spiritual law fed the thousands. His consciousness of peace calmed the troubled mind. His love was a healing balm to the sick. His love. Okay. Jesus possessed a transcendent power. And have you ever asked yourself, why can't I perform these same miracles? Why can't I live a life of magic? I think you have, Holmes says. I have, and everyone has. Haven't we often wondered or wished, if only? The master teacher laid down the lessons for us to follow in his path. We've just been a little bit blind to them, if you will. He says Jesus consciously brought the invisible power of life, capital L, life, divine principle, to bear upon his environment. He told his followers that what he was doing, they could do. What he was doing. And he wasn't talking about just teaching in parables. He was talking about those incredibly indescribable things that he did in working with all sorts of people, from healing, from enlightening, from creating possibilities and potential beyond an individual's understanding. He says the whole mystery and the meaning of the teaching of Jesus is bound up in one word: believe. Believe. He says, when we turn to the teachings of Jesus, we find them direct, simple, and understandable. He said, quote, I am that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. If you've had the opportunity to read the Edinburgh and Doré lectures, you'll find early on in the Edinburgh lectures, Judge Troard talks about the level of intelligence that the higher, well, here, let me see if I can find this here real quick, because I believe I have this, okay. The nature of the evolutionary principle is it unerringly provides for the continual advance of the race. He says, the progress towards higher intelligence is always in the direction of narrowing down this margin of accident, okay, being subject to evolutionary forces, if you will, and taking the individual more and more out of the law of averages and substituting the law of individual selection. In other words, our choice, how we choose, what we choose. And in that process, as we live our life, our purpose is to live our life at higher and greater degrees of livingness. When I talked about before we open our eyes in the morning, claim the day. We're claiming a greater and higher degree of livingness. Claim the day. We're claiming our recognition of the truth of who we are. Claim the day in confidence, believing, having faith. It's ours. There's one life. That life is God's life. That life is ours. Same life, no difference. We are the living expressions in this physical materiality of the divine principle, seeking to express itself through us. This thing called life. So moving on. Jesus never claimed to be different from other men. He said, what I am, you are also. What I do, you can do. Where I am going, you may go. It's not a club of exclusion. It's a club of inclusion. Inclusion, with no exceptions. Okay? Did he not tell us that the kingdom of heaven is at hand? He told us that the only thing that obscured heaven is our lack of faith. We have faith as a tool. Now, we have faith in all sorts of things that limit our life, limit our happiness, limit the abundance, limit the health that we experience. We got all sorts of faith in that stuff because race consciousness tells us so. Society tells us so. You know, it's flu season. Well, you know, you got to stay away from an open window. You know, and you know, and you know. Some of these are anecdotal, and some of these have some solid science behind them. And I'm not suggesting that you avoid doing things that are necessary to experience life in the most healthful way that you possibly can. But at the same time, as we do that, if we open up to an understanding of a greater good, a greater love, and we don't limit our access to it by things that separate us out in consciousness and our beingness and our spirituality from the divine principle. We see and we begin to see, and we see at ever greater and higher degrees, things unfold in our life. And it's awesome. And we can do that. And I'll see you when we come back. We're going to take our next break.
Are you thinking of selling your home? Since 2004, the Souza Group, brokered by eXp Realty, has specialized in premier property listings and sales located in the Clovis Unified and North Fresno markets. The Souza Group will do their best to exceed your expectations. Visit clovisunifiedhomes.com. If your home floods, who will you call? When your house springs a leak, it's time to call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service at 559-213-9430. Clean Master will be there in 60 minutes to start fixing your home. And Clean Master bills your insurance directly, saving you the hassle because you've got enough to worry about. Clean Master also offers carpet and upholstery cleaning, carpet repair, pet odor removal, and more. Remember, Clean Master Emergency Flood Service. 559-213-9430 and visit cleanmasterflood.com. Warrior yourself a glass of Crybaby wine available at the market and Sam's Italian Deli. And remember to ask for Crybaby wine at your favorite restaurant.
Forget about the higher good of food, right? You're growing a product that people enjoy really all over the world. I mean, how does that make you feel?
I think about that all the time. I think about the families sitting around a table, enjoying a meal. I just see that what we do brings families together.
I mean, we're blessed. We're in paradise for food.
Farm invites you to eat delicious, nutritious 32954 Road 222 in North Park, California. The Gnarly Carrot is a local, natural, seasonally changing market offering a wide range of products from local Central Valley vendors. Get your caffeine fix, grab a smoothie, and support small businesses. Learn more at kernfamilyfarm.com and visit the Gnarly Carrot today. Doctor in Sukasa allows you to connect with your doctor when you need a quick treatment. Avoid a trip to a medical clinic or emergency room and connect by video with your doctor from your home, work, or anywhere. Just go to drinsukasa.com on your phone, tablet, or computer. Dr. in Sukasa provides quality care that is convenient, bilingual, and affordable, so you are never left without access to health care. Visit drinsukasa.com today.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling. You know, these things are incredible. You have like a whole computer in your hand, and you can stay close to your family and all sorts of other good things. But there was something I had saved on here, and I've read a little bit from this before. I'm going to read a little bit more in a different space. But the idea in science today, the concept of the probability of life happening on this dirt thing that we call Earth or Mother Earth, right? It takes so much to fall into place that science today is beginning to look at this with a new eye, if you will. There was a period of time where science was part of religion, then it split, and then science denigrated religion, and now we're at a day where a lot of science is looking back at spirituality. I won't say religion, but they're looking back at spirituality. And they're considering or reconsidering a lot of the things that are to be found in that knowledge base of humanity. So there's a high probability for life on this planet. What has to take place for that high probability to exist is immense. So he says, and this article is be found in Aeon, A-E-O-N. It says, some take the fine-tuning to be simply a basic fact about our universe. Fortunate, perhaps, but not something requiring an explanation. He says, but like many scientists and philosophers, the author of this particular paper finds this implausible. In Life of the Cosmos, 1999, the physicist Lee Smolin has estimated that, taking into account all of the fine-tuning examples considered, the chance of life existing in the universe is 1 in 10 to the 229th. I mean, that's 10 with 229 zeros behind it, right? He says, from which he concludes, in his opinion, a probability this tiny is not something that we can let go unexplained. Luck will certainly not do here. We need some rational explanation of how something this unlikely turned out to be the case. And this case in particular that they're talking about, or he's talking about, is the case for consciousness as the source behind all it is. Now, smugly in New Thought, Science, Mind, and Spirit, we can say, hey, we've known this all along, and truth be told, we've recognized consciousness as the source, but consciousness without something to be conscious of is really not consciousness. So says Ernest Holmes, and I buy into that. But consciousness, when we talk, the reason why it's so critically important to understand this concept of love, because consciousness is, well, besides being beyond our ability to understand, it's also, we can recognize certain laws that, just like the law of gravity or, law of, various energy laws and stuff like that. There are things, and we give them the name of laws, but they're behaviors, if you will, that have to be consistent in order for consciousness to exist as a creative something in our universe. It can't be in opposition to itself, and that's kind of a cardinal primary principle, because if it creates something in opposition to itself, then it becomes self-destructive. There wouldn't be anything for us to experience. There would be no life. So it can't be in opposition to itself. So however you want to understand that personally, it means that in our consciousness, being the consciousness in the individualized aspect, we must hold ourselves to the same understanding. And as we do, we enhance our creativeness. And this is what the divine teacher taught. This is what Jesus taught, the master teacher. He was speaking at a time a few weeks ago, a couple thousand years ago, to people that understood at the level that the words that he used expressed his intention. Today we can look at those same words and we can take them for the truth that they are as we seek to express our life and to express it more abundantly in all areas. So moving forward, he says, Jesus was a happy and radiant soul. He was triumphant. He said, I have come that you may have joy. I have come that you might have peace. I have come that you might have life. Blessed are they who do hunger and thirst after the truth, for they shall find it. And then someone asked him, what is the truth? And he answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. What I am, you may become. And he wasn't talking about I am the way, the truth, and the life as the only individualized, singular exception. He was talking about what he taught. What he taught, understood, and embodied becomes the way, the truth, and the availability of life for each and every one of us. We can live our life at a higher, greater degree. Matter of fact, our purpose in life. We are tasked with learning the truth of who we are. Judge Tord talks about, to the extent that we're in the relative, the part of reality that lives with the five senses. To the extent we're in that, in consciousness, to that extent, we're not in the absolute truth. To the extent that we are in consciousness, the absolute, we're not in the relative. And what that means for us, each and every one of us, is that we can make a choice as to how we sit with those two ends, if you will, of the level of consciousness. And the more we choose to make ourselves in alignment with the absolute, as we do that, we diminish our consciousness of the necessity of being tied to the relative. We no longer have fear or worry or judgment. We no longer have chaos in our life. We bring peace into our life and through us into the world. He says, Holmes writes, he says, if you wish to do, and he's quoting Jesus again, what I am doing, follow the few simple truths that I have given you. And there you go. He says, I have told you that the kingdom of God is at hand. You do not see it because you are filled with fear. You do not see it, or your eyes are so filled with the tears that you cannot see. Your ears are so dulled with confusion that you cannot hear. And your minds are so weighted down with doubt that you cannot understand. And again, like I said, you can throw anger, worry, hatred, pretty much anything that you could think of that we would look at and say, that not good, okay? But we cannot assign the not good to the other. We have to accept the truth of who we are. And as we do that, as we seek to express it in our life, we become the creators of greater good in our life experience. He says, what was his remedy for all this? He says, open your spiritual eyes, listen with the inner ear, open your minds. And when he talks about opening your minds, he's talking about opening your heart, opening your transcendent understanding. He says, what is it that we are to open our eyes, our ears, and our minds to? What is it that we must see, hear, and understand? Is it something Jesus learned through silent communion with life? Or it is something that Jesus learned with the silent communion with life? The inward ear of Jesus was in tune with the divine harmony. His inward eye looked upon a spiritual universe. His human consciousness was transmuted into a divine understanding as he sought for and found his union with life. And so can we. Is it not true that we seek wholeness in the externals? We should like to influence people and make friends, but have we realized that the friendships which come through influencing people lacks that inwardness which makes friends without influencing them? In other words, making somebody do or be what it is that you feel that they have to do or be for you to be happy, instead of you being happy and accepting others as being that expression of God as others. You know, take it down to the personal level, just within your own small sphere. Don't try to take on the whole world at once. Maybe just try to take on your relationships with your family or those that you work with or your schoolmates or wherever you're at in your life experience. He says that no matter how many thoughts of doubt enter our minds, we just mentally brush them aside. Whoa, wait a second. What do you mean? Just brush them aside. Those doubts, okay? Those doubts are based in our experience. And we begin to run our, and you can call it your monkey mind or the squirrel cage in your mind or the voice in the back of your mind, the clatter, the chaos, however. But we run that, okay? Because there's a part of us that's tied to the five senses. There's part of us that's tied to the material life that we live. There's part of us that doesn't want to give that up, because to give that up takes us to a place that we can't see. That's why we see with our spiritual eyes. It takes us to a place that we can't understand, because the divine is beyond our understanding. It takes us to a place where we have to be open to the truth, open to love, open to the divine principle. Holmes teaches, not in this part of the book, but in the textbook and in other places, that for each and every one of us, it's important that we understand and experience the spiritual, that we have a spiritual experience in our life. That's not an ongoing, necessarily, state of beingness. It can be an experience that we experience once. Generally speaking, you'll know it if it's happened. I knew a minister, he's no longer with us, and he was incredible. He was a great practitioner. He manifested a very active and involved, successful church back in the days when they called them churches. And he shared with me in the later years of his life, he told me, he says, Steve, he says, I only experienced this once. And he was talking about this transcendental experience, if you will, that in his case, it demonstrated during a time of meditation. And he said it was like an amazing thing. And he went on to describe it, and I'm not going to describe it here and now because that's not important. But that was the only time in his life that he ever had that experience. And it's not like he ever chased that experience to have it again. That wasn't the point of telling me. He continued practicing daily as a practitioner, as a minister. He continued practicing as a sojourner on this spiritual pathway. And that's what we're all charged with. Holmes talks about if you put this into practice in your life, if you take the teachings and the tools that we share in Science of Mind and Spirit, and you put them into practice in your life, you are a practitioner. Maybe you don't have a wall certificate. Maybe you haven't been to umpteen classes or whatever. But if you practice it, and ideally if you practice it, you're practicing every day. You are a practitioner. You can speak your word, and it's amazing as you continue to practice. The old saying, practice makes perfect, is not really true. Practice makes improvement. And so it's through daily practice that we make improvement in our relationship with the divine. It's in practice daily that we begin to realize our relationship to this thing called life and to see it unfold daily in our lives. It's through practice that we learn how awesome we are as individuals. And it's through our practice that the world becomes a little more peaceful, a little more harmonious, a little more beautiful in the inner relations between individuals. We are one. We are a unity. We have a tendency to want to separate ourselves out. And it's not that that's a bad thing. There's a time and a place for individualization as our personal expression. But we start with a oneness, a unity. And we're all in that family. There are no walls that separate us. There are no limitations. There are no guidelines. There are no definitions. In God, there's only one. There is one life. That life is God. That life is our life now. So this is as far as I'm going to go in chapter 2. We'll close it off next time and move into chapter 3. I hope you've gleaned a little bit. I hope today maybe it was a little more inspirational or encouraging in your day today. I'm open to people that send me emails and answering them, prayer requests. And if you seek to support us, we're open to that too. As you go through the week, you go through this week, know that the light of God surrounds you, the love of God enfolds you, the power of God protects you, and the presence of God watches over you. Awesomely and truly, wherever you are, God is there. All is well. I'll see you when we come back. Take care, my friends.
Hi everyone, I am Sparkle Sujin with the Everything Sparkle Show. Tune in every Thursday live at 4 p.m. You will see people that are motivational, inspirational, inspiring, and of course, entertaining. We have a great time. We learn things about how big celebrities are inspiring big names here in Fresno. Hugh Hefner is the reason we have Fresno Magazine, and Gnarly Charlie got his start because Johnny Carson told him to. So, tune in, you'll learn something new, and have a good time.
Visit the beautiful city of Exeter and visit ExeterChamber.com. The Chamber's mission is to promote, support, and enable Exeter to prosper, creating a strong local economy, promoting community, and providing networking opportunities. Follow the Chamber on Facebook and Twitter, or give the Chamber a call at 559-592-2919.
Call PG's Catering for all your special occasions. Available to cook any variety of foods and desserts that will leave your taste buds wanting more. Call 559-558-2682 and follow Peaches on Instagram and Facebook.
Is everything in life draining you? Come to Stretch 360. Our professional staff can offer you many options for relaxation like deep tissue or hot stone massages, infrared medical grade sauna. Once you leave us, you'll look and feel like $1,000,000. Stretch 360. Relaxation is only a stretch away.
Call Nicole Hamilton McManus at 559-917-3040 to buy this perfect, romantic, rustic ranch with a 2-home setup. Located only 12 miles from the entrance to Kings Canyon and Sequoia National Parks. This beautifully maintained property boasts of amenities and custom features. The main home is a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,670 square feet. The guest home is 2 bedrooms, 1 bath with 1,163 square feet. Also features a 75-foot lap pool, a cabana, a beautiful garden, and 2 small nearby ponds. Call Nicole Hamilton McManus at 559-917-3040.
The Art of Becoming Who We Are in Christ by Jolene Kennedy is a book about the process of maturity as we find our true identity, since God's promises must be received, embraced, and activated within us. Get your copy today and check out JoleneKennedy.com.
Fleet Feet Fresno is more than just a running and sportswear store. Fleet Feet Sports' mission is to provide runners and other active Fresnans with gear that fits their individual needs, training that helps them reach their fitness goals, and races that satisfy their competitive spirit. Get to know Fleet Feet Fresno today